In 1986, Ed and Lorraine Warren, the world's most famous paranormal investigators, arrived at a small duplex in West Pittston, Pennsylvania. They delivered a diagnosis, and it was swift and terrifying. The house on Chase Street was infested, not with a ghost, but with a powerful demon, one that was physically and sexually assaulting the Smurl family who lived there. The Warrens called for exorcisms, they spoke to the press, and a nation became captivated by the terror. But while the Warrens were hunting for demons, they seemed to miss the clues that were right there in plain sight. They missed the town's long and painful history of mine collapses that shook the very ground the houses were built on. They missed the critical medical records of the family patriarch. And they missed the fact that when independent scientists asked to verify the claims, the doors were shut. In a frenzy to prove a demonic infestation, what did the Warrens really overlook? Tonight, we expose the overlooked facts and the convenient omissions that challenge the official story of one of America's most controversial hauntings. Our story begins not with a demon, but with a disaster. In 1972, Hurricane Agnes tore through Pennsylvania, forcing Jack and Janet Smurl from their home. A year later, they found a new beginning in a modest blue duplex on Chase Street in the nearby town of West Pittston. They settled into one half of the house, while Jack's parents moved into the other. For a while, life was normal. And then, the strange thing started. At first, they were just annoyances, the kinds of quirks you might expect in an old house. Stains mysteriously reappearing on walls. Tools vanishing from a workbench, only to reappear days later. But soon, the activity grew more unsettling. Foul odors, like rotting flesh, would fill a room and then vanish. The family reported that kitchen appliances would burst into flames, even when completely unplugged. They heard noises that defied explanation, pig-like grunts, blood-curdling screams, and voices that mimicked their own family members. The house was becoming a place of fear. The Smurls, devout Catholics, turned to their faith. They had the home blessed by priests, but the disturbances only seemed to intensify. They felt they were under siege from an unseen force, and they were desperate. This was the story the Smurls told, a story of an ordinary family plunged into an extraordinary nightmare. It was a perfect foundation for a ghost story, but it was a foundation with deep, unseen cracks. Before we get any deeper into the paranormal claims, we have to talk about the ground beneath the Smurls' feet. West Pittston, Pennsylvania, is in the heart of America's anthracite coal region. For over a century, the area was defined by deep mining. That industry came to a tragic end in 1959 with the Knox mine disaster, when the Susquehanna River broke through a mine roof, flooding the vast tunnels that honeycombed the earth throughout the valley. The disaster ended deep mining, but it left a dangerous legacy: mine subsidence. The city has been plagued by the collapse of these old, forgotten voids ever since. A 2012 study confirmed that Pittston has a long, ongoing history of subsidence, from small depressions in lawns to sudden sinkholes. These events can cause houses to shake, shudder, and produce strange, unsettling noises. So, was it a demon making the house groan and the walls rap? Or was it the slow, inevitable collapse of the earth beneath it? It's a question that seems to have never been seriously considered by the investigators who were about to enter the scene. Their focus was immediately on the supernatural, ignoring the very literal instability of the home's foundation. Back inside the house on Chase Street, the family story was escalating from strange sounds to outright violence. The activity was no longer just creepy. It was becoming physically dangerous. They claimed their German Shepherd was picked up and thrown into a wall. One of their daughters was allegedly pushed down a flight of stairs. A light fixture crashed from the ceiling, gashing another daughter's forehead. Then came the claims that would make the Smurl case infamous. Both Jack and Janet reported being sexually assaulted by unseen entities. Janet described being molested in her sleep. Jack claimed a grotesque, scaly, succubus-like figure assaulted him in the living room while he was watching a baseball game. He also stated that when he would try to pray the rosary, a force would drag him from his knees. This was no longer the work of a simple ghost. The family believed this was the work of something demonic, a force intent on their complete destruction. The story had reached a fever pitch, and it was at this moment that the Smurls decided they needed experts. They needed the Warrens. In early 1986, Janet Smurl contacted Ed and Lorraine Warren. The couple arrived, ready to confront the evil the Smurls believed had taken over their lives. According to Ed Warren, the presence was immediately obvious. He claimed that within moments of entering the home, he felt the temperature plummet and saw a dark, human-like mass form in front of him. The Warrens' investigation was swift. They concluded the family was dealing with not one, but four entities: an old woman, a man who had died in the home, a violent young girl, and controlling all of them, a single, powerful demon. The Warrens brought holy water and played religious music, which they said provoked the entity into a violent rage, shaking mirrors and furniture. They claimed to have documented the haunting extensively, collecting audio tapes of the unexplained grunts and groans. For the Smurl family, the Warrens' arrival was a validation. Their terrifying experiences were real. For the rest of the world, the Warrens' involvement transformed a local ghost story into a certified demonic infestation. The narrative was now set. This is a good place to pause and talk about what some researchers call the Warren pattern. We saw it in Amityville, and we see it here. It's a sequence of events that seems to repeat in their most famous cases. First, an immediate diagnosis of not just a haunting, but a demonic one. Second, the activity often escalates dramatically after the Warrens get involved. And third, the case is quickly brought to the media, creating a national sensation. This pattern raises a critical question about objectivity. Were the Warrens impartial investigators? Or were they demonologists who arrived expecting to find a demon? This brings us to the evidence they claim to have collected. Ed Warren told the press he had audio tapes of paranormal sounds and even videotape of a dark mass moving through the house. This should have been the smoking gun. But when journalists and skeptical investigators from the Committee for the Scientific Investigation of Claims of the Paranormal, or SICUP, asked to see it, the evidence was never produced. Ed gave conflicting excuses, telling one person he'd given the tapes to a TV company he couldn't name, and others that they were with the church. Church authorities, however, later said nothing had ever been turned over to them. The proof that could have ended all debate remains completely unseen. If you're finding this analysis compelling, subscribe for more deep dives into history's most confusing cases. Does the absence of public evidence from the Warrens change your view of the case? Let me know in the comments. Guided by the Warrens, the Smurl family went public in August of 1986. The story exploded. Chase Street turned into a media circus, with news vans lining the block and reporters camped out on the lawn. The family appeared on major television shows, sharing their story with a captivated national audience. Amid the frenzy, the Warrens arranged for a priest authorized by the Diocese of Scranton to perform an exorcism on the house. In fact, 3 were eventually performed. But even this ultimate spiritual weapon seemed to fail. The family reported that the rituals would quiet the house for a day or two, but claimed the demon was too cunning. It would simply escape the rites by moving to the other side of the duplex or by following the family when they left the house. Another priest from the diocese who spent 2 nights in the home later stated that nothing unusual happened during his stay. Despite the blessings, the prayers, and the full rite of exorcism, the entity remained. The battle seemed unwinnable. The media spectacle, however, was a success. As the story reached peak sensationalism, a group of scientists tried to bring a dose of methodical inquiry to the case. Professor Paul Kurtz of the State University of New York at Buffalo, then chairman of SICUP, was deeply skeptical. Kurtz made the Smurls a generous offer. His organization would pay for the entire family to stay in a hotel for a week while a team of independent investigators examined the house under controlled conditions. It was the perfect opportunity to see if the phenomena continued when the family was absent. The Smurls, on the advice of the Warrens, flatly refused. They also refused Kurtz's offer of free psychological examinations, and when 2 SICUP investigators showed up at the house, they were denied entry. The family that had invited television cameras from across the country abruptly closed the door to anyone who wanted to investigate scientifically. And this is where we find perhaps the most significant and most overlooked piece of the puzzle. It was a fact that was public knowledge, but rarely mentioned in the sensational reports. In 1983, just 2 years before the worst of the activity began, Jack Smurl had undergone surgery to remove water from his brain, a complication from a case of meningitis he'd suffered years earlier. This was a serious neurological event. Professor Kurtz suggested the family's claims could be explained by psychological factors, perhaps stemming from delusions or hallucinations related to Jack's brain impairment. Suddenly, a potential medical and psychological explanation existed that was just as extraordinary as the paranormal one. Yet it was an explanation the Warrens and the media seemed to completely ignore. In 1987, after the media attention faded, the Smurls moved away from Chase Street. The next tenant, Deborah Owens, lived there without incident. She told reporters she never encountered anything supernatural in the home, casting serious doubt on the idea that the property itself was haunted. Despite claiming exhaustion from the media, the Smurls, with the help of the Warrens and writer Robert Curran, released a book titled The Haunted in 1988. A made-for-TV movie of the same name followed in 1991. Critics at the time pointed to the book and movie deals as a potential financial motive, a charge the family has always denied. But the question lingered, was this a story they had to tell, or a story they had to sell? Jack Smurl passed away in 2017. His daughter, Karen, has occasionally worked as a paranormal investigator, stating that her father was happy she could be a voice for others who had no one to turn to. This speaks to a genuine belief on the part of the family, a sincere feeling that what they experienced was real. But sincerity and reality are not always the same thing. So, what did the Warrens miss in the Smurl haunting? They missed the context. In their singular focus on finding a demon, they appear to have overlooked every plausible, natural explanation. They missed the environmental context of a town built on collapsing coal mines, a perfect source for bumps and groans in the night. They minimized the profound medical history of Jack Smurl, whose brain surgery provides a clear potential path to hallucinations or altered perceptions. They presided over an investigation where the only evidence was anecdotal, where their own proof was never submitted to scrutiny, and where all offers of independent, scientific analysis were rejected. The Warrens didn't just investigate a haunting. They validated it, amplified it, and packaged it for public consumption. The tragedy on Chase Street may not have been a demonic infestation, but a perfect storm of human factors. A family under immense stress, a house with a history of strange noises, a patriarch with a serious medical condition, and a pair of investigators who saw a demon in every shadow. Add a media hungry for a sensational story, and you get the Smurl haunting. Now, decades later, the story is being resurrected. The Conjuring, Last Rites, the next film in the franchise built on the Warrens case files, is set to tell the story of the Smurl haunting. But which story will it tell? The one-sided tale of a terrifying demon? Or will it dare to explore the more complex and perhaps more terrifying human story of what happens when fear and belief collide, and what gets missed when we are so determined to find the monsters we already believe in? What do you think really happened on Chase Street? Was a hoax, a genuine haunting, or something else entirely? Let me know your theories below. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more investigations into the stories behind scares.